Welcome to another episode of A Question of Meaning with Arthur and Katie. So this week we thought we would talk about money and...
or really actually economics.
Economics,
yeah, I said
right.
that, and money.
And the question, because, this is something that bothers Arthur and I a lot, that...
we don't have any. That's what bothers us a lot. It should bother you folks.
But what bothers us is that it just doesn't... There seems to be a lot of misperceptions out there in the country about what's really true about the way money is spread across the income distribution across the population of the United States. And the Tea Party, we think, is built on a lot of confusion. We've had some fun over the last few days gathering some statistics and making some little charts, printing out some charts and making some charts. So this is your idea.
Overview, I would say, is the show is called A Question of Meaning, and we often pick on politics because, what did the carpenters say? By their deeds you will know them. Well, politics and economics, these are the system, the social system is, we think, a direct reflection of the, existing state of consciousness at this particular level of evolution.
Right.
In the United States. So we're going to look at economics today because we think it's really telling. The way it's been forever is that there's a handful who've got it all. They're kings, they're emperors, they're pharaohs, far back as you can look. And there are legions of those who have not. And this country was founded on this noble idea that everyone should be able to pursue life, liberty, unless you were black or a woman. Well, never mind. And the pursuit of happiness. And since we all know money buys happiness,
that's right.
I certainly do.
Well, that's the American dream, which was actually, that phrase was coined in, I think it's the 1930s. The American dream is that this was a country as a meritocracy. And at least this is what it always meant to me. And that everyone was equal in opportunity here. That I'm just talking about the fantasy, the illusion.
The sales pitch.
That we all had equal opportunity, that anyone could, what were we all raised on the, now I can't think of the name of it, but it was a parable in the late 1800s. There's lots and lots of books.
Rags to riches?
Yeah, it was this character name. This
40 acres and a mule?
Well, that everybody could go from rags to riches. Yeah, that was the thing. I'll think of it over the course of this show.
Yeah, that's a good one.
So,
and some did.
That's right. And
over 100, 200 years, many did.
That's right. And so, we use those few to say, well, it could happen to anyone. It could happen to everyone. Anyone could be president, we say. We tell our children. And so this is the myth of America, is that there's an equality here. And what's really true is not only is the United States, you can look at charts, the most unequal in income distribution of any of the wealthy industrialized nations, that inequality has been increasing for the last 30 years.
What happened 30 years ago?
Let's see, I can't.
Oh, I know. It's the Reagan. Right. It was Morning in America. MOURN. No, I think it's morning like in America.
Right. And then
trickle down.
Third, the myth that of social being, people moving across classes is actually a myth. That through the whole course of the history of the United States,
you can say that here in the post-racial era,
that there really is almost no mobility between classes.
Got to say this. This is so great. Bill Maher on HBO this week on I almost said Politically Incorrect. I'll leave you with some dandy tapes of Politically Incorrect with that teabagger who won the senatorial. O'Donnell.
Christine O'Donnell.
When she's talking about her experience in witchcraft, a teabagger senatorial primary winner in Delaware. He was talking about, well, you know what I think, folks. I think Obama's half-assed. I think he's really doing a half-assed job, and I think I know why. Because he's half black. He's only half black. If he was all black, he'd really kick butt and take names. But unfortunately, he's got a white man inside him that's holding him back. Brilliant. Amar occasionally is capable
he
of
does.
really.
That's right. So, okay, well,
Well, I just wanted to give a quick, because you gave us a little history lesson there, that the income disparity has been growing severely for 30 years. That's what, 1980? Yeah, that's right. What a coinkydink. So I gotta do this really quick. I've done it on an earlier show, but this is my interpretation of trickle-down economics, and I've been very gratified to see in the last week or within 2 weeks, two major editorial cartoonists, one Pat Oliphant, I can't remember the other one. There was my idea, finally drawn beautifully. Trickle-down economics works like this. There are legions of people who are dying of thirst, or they never get enough to drink, stretching as far as the eye can see. In the middle of this legion of thirsty people, this host, there's a tall tower. And at the top of the tower, there's a big platform where the 1% live, who have amassed untold amounts of fresh bottled water. Perrier, Evian, whatever, the latest and greatest. The purest, finest water, and all they want. And they enjoy it. They drink, they guzzle it. And occasionally nature takes its course. They have to wee, to put it genteelly. We're in the 7 o'clock hour here.
That's right. We still want to stay away from
it
after
start
11.
the next 6 months on I'll try to control my anger and watch my potty mouth. This is America, after all. We have a Puritan heritage to maintain. Like Captain Colonel Kurt said in Apocalypse Now, we drop liquid fire on them from our aircraft, but we won't let our pilots write the F word on the side of their planes. That's morality.
Okay.
Anyway, so when nature takes its course, the 1% stride over to the edge, unzip, and let fly onto the heads of those gathered below. And that is trickle-down economics, ladies and gentlemen. And we should be furious. This Tea Party outrage, I never really thought about that. I'll shut up. But yeah, right. The Tea Party came out of nowhere. They were financed by some, right-wing fat cats. And they've grown to an appreciable force in this country.
Yeah, in a year and a half.
We're in the
blazes.
In the hot place. Are the progressives, the green movement,
right?
The liberals.
It shows what can be done.
Yeah, let's get off our asses and take this country back.
Right.
I'm no Democrat anymore. I would sooner vote for, some dog in the pound than vote for Heath Shuler. He's about as much of a Democrat. As John Bonner or Bonner, however you pronounce his name. The guy's he's a right-wing clown. He doesn't represent what Asheville and the progressive movement is about at all. Look who he replaced.
And look what, if you really factored in the entire district.
Yeah, that's right.
Asheville's only a small percentage of that. It's the truth. But okay, so he's an egregious example. Okay. But when you look, because you know what, we've been really happy about how many people who have called us and been supportive of our show
overwhelmingly
with country accents. There's just because they are live in the country doesn't mean.
I come from country people.
That's
baby.
Right. So,
way back in the country.
The thing is, though, when you look at the Democrats as a whole, we're not just talking about Heath Shuler, who's an egregious example of conservative Democrats. When you look at Democrats as a whole, to say they represent progressive values is a joke. And when you say, why do 50% of the population on average not vote? Well, perhaps it's because that's a large percentage of those people don't feel represented by either the Democrats or the Republicans. And that means there's a huge base out here that could respond to a really progressive message.
We could really change this country.
Right.
And two senators from Wyoming, two senators from Delaware.
There's
so
a
Bill
lot
Maher
of
was saying also.
Right.
Those senators represent about the ones from Delaware,
100,000
200,000 people each.
Right.
2 senators from California, where Bill's show was being broadcast from, those senators represent 18 million people each. Now, you tell me that's fair representation.
That's right.
You
That's
tell me the
democracy.
electoral college system makes any sense. You tell me gerrymandering isn't anything but a bunch of backroom smoke-filled hogs, just maintaining their stranglehold on your country and keeping you poor, which is what this show is about. We're fomenting rebellion here, folks.
Well,
let's
we're
take
saying
it back.
that we, with the right. Anyway, let's just get into these.
Yeah, let's get into these. Kitty made some nifty. These are pizza pies.
Yeah, so this is Arthur came up with this idea, which I really like.
Green peppers and the
you have to
it's a kind of a Technicolor pizza pie.
Well, I wanted to make it really clear to be holding it.
Yeah, that looks good.
So, right, because one of the problems with talking about economics is people, the majority of people have a problem with numbers to begin with. And then when people write about numbers, they often play really fast and loose with statistics, which bothers me no end. They'll say things like 50% of all people, have trouble paying their mortgage. Well, I mean, and that's not really good because, is it every year? Is it averaged over 10 years? I mean, anyway. So one of the, and this is another area, you try and find, this is a graph representing the income distribution in this country, and you try and get numbers, really hard numbers on this. It can be difficult, but these are fairly accurate. I believe there's
right in the ballpark accurate, not wildly off.
There's a
like
professor
10% or something like that.
There's a professor at the University of California at Berkeley.
Wouldn't you know it?
Named Emmanuel Saez that has done a. You'll
I wonder
know.
if he knows John Yoo. John Yoo teaches at Berkeley, and he suffered to live. He's still not been.
But anyway, this Professor Saez,
times change,
you'll see
not
him
my
referred
generation.
to a lot. When you're trying to find statistics, you'll find him being referred to for graphs. But then I've looked at the census figures, the government census figures, and they're similar to this. So I think we're close if this isn't exactly right.
Say 5%.
So
one way or the other.
What we're going to imagine here is that this is a pizza, okay? And we're going to say let's imagine a country of 100 people.
Let's imagine this country, which is what this is about.
This is the U.S. in 2007. You have to accept, you can't always have the absolute up-to-date figures. So there's 100 people in the United States, and they're going to share this pizza. So how are they sharing? This is their income. Okay, we're going to get to wealth later. But this is the
1
income.
year.
This is 1 year of income.
Every dime that you, us, everybody in this country makes. Total accumulated income of the United States for 1 year.
Okay, so
this is how it's split up.
So the 100 people line up to have their share of the pizza pie, right? Okay, so
it's delivered once a year. Maybe it's delivered on the 31st, a New Year's Eve party, and it's 100 people. And here's the pizza.
That's
man.
right. Here's your share.
Yeah,
right.
Here's your share.
Okay, so
for a year, next year.
Okay, the first person in line.
One person.
A quarter. There you go, Arthur.
Very gentle. Oh, thank you. Now look, I'm trying to lose weight.
Okay. So, all right, now think how the 99 people in the rest of the line. Imagine being the 99 people. Wow. Okay, that hog in the front of the line just took a quarter of the pizza. Okay?
A quarter. For me, one person. 99 people left to feed. What if we had a buffet and that was the only thing on it? First guy cuts himself a quarter. One person.
Okay, then the next 9 people take another quarter. But what's interesting, that seems like a whole lot, that the top 10% take half the pie, is what we're saying here. But look at what happens between the number 1 and one of these guys. Look at the difference already.
You're talking here, you're talking, medium-sized business owners, doctors, lawyers, pharmacists.
Here, in this one. These are the CEOs,
don't even
hedge fund
it.
managers.
Yeah, right. This is the one. Wall Street, bankers.
Right. Okay, so I'm not going to pull all these guys off because I think you can get the message. We got 90 people left in line.
And here's what the other 90 get.
Half.
Half.
90 people. So
Ever try
10
to cut
people.
Did you ever try to divide a pizza for a half pizza, a half a pie? Did you ever try to cut it 90 slices?
Arthur asked me to cut.
I mean, hold up
a
one of
wedge.
those little slices. This is one
Right.
of the.
This is a privileged. Okay.
That's their piece.
So, this is 9. This would be about. Yeah, I don't even want to go there. But I mean,
Makes my head hurt.
I was trying to, I decided trying to cut a sliver off this would be too hard. Okay.
It's like a
know.
smiley face or a watermelon.
Watermelon. So I like this because it makes it graphic. Okay, there's one person.
That's me. Oink. Oink. That's the 1% of this population gets a quarter of the yearly income. 25%. From 1%. What is that? Say we have 300 million people. Do the math. I can't. I was awful with numbers. If the population rounded off to 300 million people, well, you can't really do that. It's the
3 million?
yeah.
That's a lot of people.
3 million people. But you know what? That's less than the population of Dallas, the greater Dallas area.
Yeah.
There
Okay.
you go. Get my quarter back.
So, all right. So,
So
that's,
3 million
you know,
people in this country of over 300 million take a quarter of the income in a year.
So that seems pretty outrageous, right?
I mean, this is a democracy. Everybody. What happened to rags to riches? Sounds
Right.
like somebody's rich and a hell of a lot of people aren't.
It doesn't seem very equal. I'll say that much. Okay, but when you get to wealth, that makes this look fair.
Buckle your seatbelts.
Okay, this is the wealth chart, and we did the same thing. So we, and I didn't write the actual numbers on here, so I got it down here. Okay, so we got our pie. We got 100 people, and this is the wealth. What do you own? So you put all your assets together and subtract all your the things you owe,
Everything.
your debts.
You know, your
So what
Mad
is your
magazine
wealth?
collection, your
That's right. Your tennis shoes.
your tennis shoes, you know, with depreciation, talking in ways that most of us can understand.
Okay, so here we go. Once again, all the 100 people line up.
All the wealth.
Let's share the wealth, right? Okay, so here's the first person. Okay. Now, you know what? That looks bigger to me.
It does look bigger, doesn't it?
Here's
Oh,
your
yeah.
income.
Yearly income, yeah. So that
So here's your income, but your share of the wealth is even
you can't
bigger.
really see
I
it.
know.
Yeah, but
it's
you know,
even bigger.
It is bigger.
It's bigger. We'll
How
just say
big
that
is it?
much. Okay? So you got a quarter of the income, but you have 34% of the wealth.
Over a third. Top 1%. I come up to the pizza and slice myself a little over a third of the pie this time. Not a quarter, over a third. So good.
Okay, so how about the next 9 people? Remember
how about 'em?
the
Who
next 9
cares?
people who got, the same, they got that same percentage, about a quarter of the income, right? Okay. Now, those next 9 people, their percentage is even bigger than the 1%. They've got about 38%.
Wow.
Okay, but you put these two together, you've got 3/4 of the wealth goes to the top 10%.
10
Or
people.
belongs to the top 10 people.
How much?
75%.
75%.
Well, 72%.
72% of the pie goes to 10 people.
Okay.
But how many do we have left to feed now?
90?
90%? Have to divide how much of the pie is left? Oh, wait, you got another little sliver there. What's that?
28. We have 28% of the pie left for 90 people.
Gee, somebody's going to go hungry.
Okay. Now, if you take, and see, we could have done this with the income statistics too, because, it would be kind of like this. You get down to the bottom and, the income is like this. Okay. So now we'll feed 40 people, which will bring us to half the population.
Half the American population.
This is half the American population.
Let's say 50 people at our pizza party.
Owns 97.5% of the wealth.
Half.
Here's
Half the people.
here's the
Who cares?
here's the lowest.
Jesus said you will always have the poor with you.
That's right. Okay.
Wait a minute now. I'm gotten muddled here. What have we got? How much of the pizza has been used up?
Okay. That's 10%. This is 50%.
50% of the pizza goes to
Not, no,
No,
98%
98% of all wealth
is in half. The
is in half the population.
Yeah, 2.5% is the lower half. That means half the population basically owns nothing.
Oh, beautiful for spacious skies, for amber waves of grain, roink, roink, from purple mountain majesty, above thy fruited
And these are like 2007
plains.
figures. I'm sure it's worse now because in the old, people thought they owned their homes. But think about it. Do you own your car? Of course you don't own your car. Isn't that what people make the joke? The reason that you have drive-throughs at the banks is so that the cars can visit their real owners.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't own our cars. We don't own our houses, and those are the main things we own. Maybe we own our washing machines, And like I said, our
Watch
tennis.
what'll happen.
That's right. And our tennis shoes. We own our tennis shoes.
They don't want those.
Okay.
Are you reading? Are you with us so far?
That's right.
I mean, this is statistics. This isn't leftist nonsense. This is hard fact. So the question is, what kind of stupid population would put up with this? And Dwight D. Eisenhower, who I believe was a Republican, if I remember my history correctly, the tax rate on that 1%, significantly more than that at that time, it was anything over $400,000 in yearly income was taxed at a rate of 91%.
We actually have here, this is a chart of tax rates. And this starts in 1920. The income tax started about 1913, I think, is when the amendment to the Constitution was passed to have the tax rate. So, let's see, it was during FDR, of course, that it really first went up.
Socialist.
Okay, 60%.
Call us a government.
Then to finance World War II, because back then they actually believed that you should pay for a war through taxation. I mean, what
an interesting
what an
concept.
interesting
Radical sounds socialist again.
concept, that's right.
Communist.
So
Nazi. Whatever.
that's right. By 1932, it was 60-something percent, and I guess that was 33 actually. Then during the World War II, it went up above 80%. And during the 50s, it was in the 90s.
Show that.
Like 91, 94%.
Yeah, show it with your finger, the 50
Okay,
part.
so so this 30, 40s, 50s.
1950s.
Okay, then the 60s, it went down to about 70%. And then here, you can see Ronald Reagan's election, that low point down here. Okay. So if you read Paul Krugman, who I do, we read him twice a week in the New York Times, and I've read his books.
Monday and Friday, Princeton economist.
Yeah, he talks a lot about this in his columns and his books, because this graph shows what he calls the Great Compression. The top of the graph, and this one we may have to do differently so you can see it better. The top of the graph shows how the difference, income inequality. So the higher the line on this graph, that means the more inequality. The higher the top
discrepancy between the lowest and the highest.
The 1% compared to the lowest, and underneath shows the federal income tax rate. And you can see they're opposites. So the higher the tax rate, the lower the disparity between the top and bottom incomes in this country. And what Krugman called this the Great Compression. This is the time of the 50s when the middle class really took off, and life was good for working people. They had nice homes, nice cars. They could send their kids to college. We were raised in this time. This was for me. This was the morning in America.
Oh, it was
the working people.
It was the American dream actually happening.
That's right.
There were things called unions back then. I think a lot of people were union protection.
And what this says is, a long time ago, I thought, income tax of 90%. That meant you paid 90% on all your income. That's not the way it works, of course. There's the different tax brackets, and it's only once you get to a certain level of income, like $500,000. We're not experts.
Then, not now.
But that you start paying these kinds of tax rates. So, it's basically saying to me that in a democracy, to have a democracy, there's certain levels of wealth that just do not go with democracy. And actually,
as long as someone's eating out of a dumpster, you don't get to make $1 million a year and keep it.
And some billionaires agree with this, like Warren Buffett. There was a number of billionaires who, when under George W. Bush, they tried to eliminate the estate tax for good, argued that the estate tax was essential to continue as a democracy because that's what prevented the passage of great wealth from generation to generation, which would end in plutocracy, which is rule by the rich.
Which is what we have in this
country. And this graph is called Plutocracy Reborn. And you think, oh, she got this from a liberal website, right? No. This is from a website called Business Insider, which, as far as I can tell, is a conservative business website, and is not sympathetic to liberal ideas at all.
It's like 25 mind-blowing facts about.
But if you go to businessinsider.com, and just search on their site for Plutocracy Reborn, you will find 15 graphs like this that are incredible.
Happy days are here again, oink the sun.
So, so that's one of the things that's going on right now is this discussion about the Bush tax cuts, letting them expire. And, that was anyone who had a brain in their head knew at the time that they were passed that the whole expiration date was like a
cheap gimmick to make it go down, a little sugar coating on your jagged little pill. Al Gore, fuzzy math.
Yeah.
When he said half went to the rich of little Georgie's tax break for the hoggies. If anything, that was conservative.
Yeah.
Not to mention all of his other mischief, like attack on the estate tax and
right, because if
capital gains.
If you look at what a billionaire actually pays, and Warren Buffett talks about this, you can find him this quote of his that he pays in the percentage taxes, he pays lower percentage of his income in taxes than his secretary, because there's a cap on Social Security at like $90,000. So above that, they're not paying any Social Security tax, which is a huge part of us ordinary people's wages. And then a large percentage of the income that wealthy people get does not come from income, which is what we're talking about here. We're talking about income tax rates. Their income comes from dividends on stocks and bonds.
And what is it? The mutual funds.
Right. Well, that's basically what we're talking about.
Yeah.
So Bush lowered the tax rate on that to 15%. Now, he tried to get that down to 0, but they didn't quite pull that off. So if the majority of your income is being taxed at 15% and the majority of your income has no Social Security tax, that means your effective tax rate comes down much lower, since the top rate is capped. Income tax rate is capped at 35%. As he said, Warren Buffett said, I'm paying lower taxes than my secretary.
But he's a communist.
But that's right.
Or a socialist.
That's insane.
Or a Nazi.
And we just read in the New York Times today that some economists said that if all the federal tax if all the Bush tax cuts expired and everybody's taxes went back to and we're just talking about going back to the way they were under Clinton. We're not talking about really outrageous tax increases. I mean, remember under Clinton, there was a good economy, the federal budget was in surplus. These latest analysis shows that if all the tax cuts were allowed to expire, the federal budget could be almost balanced by 2015 without really having to do anything else. I mean, who cares about deficits?
Speaking of the pig Democrats, I mean, they're busy. The Senate Democrats are working on a compromise. This will only cost $2 trillion over the next decade because they're going to just take away half of it. I mean, I'm just done. I'm done with voting the lesser evil.
Yeah.
This country is so spoiled and lazy that we have to be coddled to like infants who will pee in our pants if we're told the truth, if we're treated like intelligent human beings. We elect people who pander to our weaknesses, who keep us divided. I mean, I don't even want to go that far, but are you with us so far?
So, what I wanted to say was, because I was going to say something else, and then what I remembered was that one of the arguments that people that come at you when you talk about these things, because I used to write a column, and so I'm used to what conservatives argue. And one of the things they argue is that the majority of taxes are paid for by the wealthy.
That's a good
okay,
one.
so let's go back to these these.
I know what you were going to say. I think you were getting up to the stock, bonds, and mutual funds are owned by, I believe, 90.
Yeah.
You have that statistic?
Yeah.
I mean, talk about off the graph, no pun intended.
Yeah. Okay. Stock ownership. The top 1% owns 50% of all stocks.
Half.
The top 10% own 90%. Okay, we've gone way beyond this wealth ownership.
We can't even do this. Katie can't cut slices of paper that thin.
So basically, all stocks and bonds are owned by the top 10%.
So recall the last quintile, the lowest quintile owned 0.5%.
No, you know what I was going to say?
Of the pie.
As what I would like if the Democrats really cared, if the Democrats are really progressive,
if they weren't bought like the Republicans,
what they would be arguing, and this is what for me a progressive movement would argue is, what is the Tea Party really after? When you say we're going to cut taxes, we're going to cut government, what are you talking about here? I mean, what is the role of government and what is the role of taxes in funding that government? Now, we can have some conversations about whether a program is really valuable or not.
Yeah, it's wasteful.
Right, sure. I mean, certain things are
like
not.
Like Pentagon. Remember when a toilet on a plane cost $10,000 or something and the hammer was like $900 for a hammer? Stuff like that.
But
could be looked at.
For me, taxes are what you are part of the cost of living in a civilized country. And taxes provide, when I look at our budget, from our business point of view, there's, we pay for supplies, we pay for computer equipment. Well, I see taxes as the same. Taxes are helping build the infrastructure that allows me to live in a country that gives me the opportunity to have a video business. So it's the same type of payment as buying computer equipment. I'm buying, having roads to drive on, and so that my shipments can come across this. I'm buying.
Public health, education, fire service. So that we wake up in the night, I can dial 911. And an ambulance can be here, or a policeman can be here to protect my life. The fire department can be here.
Right.
People are educated. Ignorance is a dangerous thing. When people don't know, then you have public education, you have sanitation. Ideally, unless there's a Republican in the White House, you have people inspecting the meat you eat.
That's right. Inspecting the eggs.
And the drugs you take.
That's right. And to me, the more complicated a society gets, the more the bigger government has to be, because back 200-300 years ago, things were pretty simple. Most people were farmers, and they grew their own
Lifespan was
food.
about 50 years.
Yeah, and there was much less need for any type of regulation or protection. But with the Industrial Revolution and the compartmentalization of labor, so that we don't grow our own food anymore.
It's called evolution.
That we need
That's-
we need a larger government to regulate and to make rules about how we relate to each other. That's part of it, and so taxes are part of living in a civilized country. And like Arthur said, like Arthur went to get his driver's license renewed, and he got up early and was there before 8 o'clock. You know why? Because they closed. There used to be 2 driver's license offices in Asheville.
I think maybe even 3. There was certainly the one on Tunnel Road closed.
And they closed. And guess why? Because they're broke. The state is broke because there's no, taxes are too low.
30 people standing in line behind me. I was first at 8 o'clock in the morning. And there've been
30 people?
30 people.
Wow. Right.
And I heard stories yesterday. A guy had come back 3 times. The last time they said they was stretched all the way around the building. It hurts. Big government. Let's see, where did this come from? Like segregation is a good thing, and if it ends, the society's going to fall apart. All Muslims are terrorists. Fear, the
That's
fear
right.
factor. Government, your own government. These clowns call themselves patriots. They're trying to destroy the United States government. That's what your right-wing agenda is really up to. Make no mistake about it. That's their goal, like the Grover Norquist's goal of shrinking government down to a size where you can drown it in the bathtub. Direct quote.
So what are we going to have if they've drowned the government in a bathtub?
You need an ambulance?
You want anarchy?
I
mean, really?
What do you think that huge chunk of people who have nothing, what do you think they're going to do? Just, are they going to keep buying what I call the lottery mentality in this country? Well, I don't want my taxes to be high when I make my $1 million.
That's right.
I mean, do you seriously believe you have a chance? Do you seriously believe that it hasn't all been bought up? It's all been bought. I don't know how parents even imagine they're going to be able to send their children to college. Public schools, what was the latest we heard? Like $60,000 per kid for tuition in a public.
No, it was higher. It was higher.
And that was for a public.
University.
We're turning into a nation of overt slaves, and it has a hell of a lot to do with the reduction of the tax burden on the people who have everything. And I've got to say this. The inbuilt flaw of the noble tradition or the noble institution of capitalism is a fatal mistake here. I'll say this real quick, too. To conflate democracy and capitalism.
Yes.
They're 2 different things. And the inbuilt flaw, for anybody who's ever played a game of Monopoly of capitalism, is it tends toward monopoly. All humans are not created equal. I know that comes as a real shock, but they're not. And especially in the area of getting their pig trotters on the cash, of the acquisition of wealth. Some people are driven to that. I mean, almost obsessive. They're very skillful at it. It's almost like a psychological condition. It's called greed. And it's one of the deadly sins, the 7 deadly sins, I believe. If it isn't, it should be.
Maybe not in that word.
And they get bigger. The companies get bigger. The companies merge. They form corporations, and they get bigger, and they get bigger, and they get bigger until they actually take over the government of the country they're in. And that's what's happened here. We're The United States, Democrats, they're bought and sold. Ralph Nader, I am so sorry I ever made you wrong. You're right. They're all on the take. Those politicians are not stupid. They're crafty and they're cunning. They are not stupid, and they love the power, and they love the butt smooching and the largesse and all the platinum parachutes and all the other stuff they get under the table. Mm-hmm. And as soon as they retire, I wonder how Georgie Porgy's doing now that he's out of office. I'd love somebody to do an investigative report on that if it still exists. In any case, the government, our country, is bought and sold. It's jerry-rigged. It's in the hands of the powerful. Make no mistake about it. And the difference between the two, there's not essentially, in the ways that really count, not a nickel's worth of difference. You know, Barack Obama said the right things to get in, and anybody with half a brain he can see he's being vastly too conciliatory and nice to the masters of the universe.
That's for sure.
Who got him in and who will keep him in if he's a good boy. Sounds like they're disenchanted with him. Because the pigs that just wrecked the world economy, they started in this country. Didn't start in France. Didn't start in Britain. Started here, where they were turned loose. The hogs were turned loose under Georgie Porgy, little Georgie Bush, corporate lapdog. That's all he's ever been, is a weasel who sucked on the sugar tip of the corporations, the wealthy and the powerful. That's what he lives for. And he got away with murder. And his last, they probably held off. They sucked it as long as to get everything they could get. They sucked at the trough until they brought the world economy down. And that's what a deregulated economy looks like, the deregulation of business. And the pigs are fighting tooth and nail now because they don't want to be regulated. What happened? Let's go back. I read an article about Rolls Royces, a $500,000 car. And the dealer said, for a while there, people were saying, hey, I fired 50 guys today. Now, there's no way I can justify this. So they're not saying that anymore, and they're starting to buy them again. We'll get one for $350,000 for the coupe. So that's the problem with capitalism. It has to be regulated. And there's a good word for that. You know what it is? Socialism. That's a good word. It's a good system because you still have the incentive and the competition and everything of a democracy, but it's not going to let the pigs wind up owning everything, which is what we've got.
So I just wanted
Please.
Before I would like to say something about socialism, but I just wanted to say something related to what you just said a little while ago, that the huge bubble of mortgage bubble and all sorts of bubbles that popped in 2008, I believe there is a direct link between the Bush tax cuts and that bubble, the size of that bubble, because all those rich people had millions of dollars given back to them from the tax cut. And what are they going to do with that money? But put it in the stock market. And so huge amounts of money flooded into the stock market over the 5 years between the tax cuts and the bubble bursting. And they artificially drove up values because they had to buy something, speculate somehow. And so that's another thing that lowering the tax rate and giving these people all this money does is they're not using this money in a productive way. They're using it in a speculative way because that gives you higher returns. It seems easier. So that that's just another cost of the tax cuts.
I believe you said this is a known trend too, right? This is not just what just happened. This is the nature of a bubble. Would you say historically? That's what I mean.
Oh, what do you mean the nature of a bubble?
The tax cuts providing all this money in play that gets sunk into
I'm not sure, but I'm just saying that it's that there's no question about it being a correlation. So socialism, I was when you were talking about socialism, that's back here in the middle part of this graph when there's less difference between the rich and the poor.
In the 50s?
And
God, things were so bad in the 50s. Anybody remember the 50s? The two-car garages? Or maybe it was just a car and a home for everybody.
Yeah, the chicken in every pot.
A chicken in every pot.
That's right. And you weren't going to be a pauper during retirement.
And kids went to college.
Right.
And so that was socialism in action.
Socialism,
Holy cow.
democratic socialism means there's a real safety net. There is only so far that anyone in a society can fall. That we agree that for me, this is when a society gets to the level of sophistication that our United States and overall wealth, that this is something that as a society we decide, if you're a part of our society, then everybody has a guarantee of a certain level of life, that below that you cannot fall. And Franklin Roosevelt, if he had lived after World War II, this was where he was going, was this economic Bill of Rights, that this was another step that we were going to take as a society, that we have the political Bill of Rights that are enshrined in the Constitution, but that we'd go beyond this and we'd say that every citizen of this country has the right to a job. That is something that this is not just something that we hope for, that the Federal Reserve will go for a target of, they have a target of 5% unemployment. They don't go for 100% employment. They go for 95% employment, and they think that's a good thing. And FDR said, no, let's go for 0% unemployment. Everyone has the right to a job. Everyone has the right to food. Everyone has the right to a minimum level of housing. These aren't maybe fundamental human rights, but they're fundamental social rights that we, in a wealthy country, agree that we believe that this is part of, to be a civilized country, this is an aspect of a civilized country, is that you guarantee these rights to your people.
Not to mention health care.
That's right.
Universal health care.
That was another aspect of this Bill of Rights, Economic Bill of Rights.
Not to mention college education.
That's right.
What kind of country would we have with a really educated class if all people were educated? Gee, I wonder what that would look like. What kind of talent we waste, what kind of geniuses we overlook in our caste system, where the 1% are the Brahmins and 50-odd% of us are the untouchables. More than that. It's a real travesty, and it's a real wake-up. I grew up believing the sun shone up the United States backside, that we were just so great.
Yeah.
Read one of the most wonderful books, I can't recommend it enough, is called The Heart is a Lonely Hunter by the Southern genius Carson McCullers. And there's a scene where a drunk is standing he gets a pack of cigarettes, Mick, the young girl, gets a pack of cigarettes. And she puts the 17 cents on the counter, and Blount, the drunk, looks at him and says, 17 cents for cigarettes now? And he picks up a penny in a grimy hand and he says, 5 mils for the crackers that grew the weed and 5 for the dupes who rolled it. A penny for you, Biff, to the owner of the place. And then he tried to read the inscription on the nickel and dime. And that's a humble homage to piracy and tyranny, to freedom and larceny. We are all the victims of propaganda and an insidious hoax that is being fed to us constantly by the ruling masters, our masters. We are slaves, de facto slaves. And once a slave knows he's a slave, there's born the seed of freedom. I wrote that line once. But as long as you can keep them ignorant, as long as you can keep them fighting each other, I'm not going to let my kids go to school with a As long as you keep them fighting each other, not going to let the immigrants come in here and take my job, keep them fighting each other. This country was, we're going to go back to when the country was good. When you had segregated schools, when women didn't have the votes. How far back do you want to go?
Well, actually,
to the Gilded Age, where a child was worked for a nickel an hour until they dropped?
Bill Maher, on that same show you quoted earlier, said the irony is that the Tea Party people, the golden age, that they seem to be remembering that they want the country to go back to, is the era of the 1950s when the tax rate was 91%, that created the success of the middle class.
Yeah, that was during Pleasantville, right?
That's right.
Ozzie and Harriet
That's
days.
Right.
pre-segregation. That's really good. Oh, let's say back during socialism, American socialism.
But really, what that's right. They're remembering the social aspects of that era, and not the economic aspects of
What a
it.
country! You get sick and you lose everything. Mm-hmm. Your health.
That's
is
right.
for
What
sale,
percentage of personal bankruptcies were due to medical emergencies? I mean, a lot. It was a high number.
You feel that aching in your backside? I can tell you what it is. You're being shafted. Shafted. That's a good polite word for it.
Shafted. That's right.
It's been going on forever. Read Grapes of Wrath by John Steinbeck. Read The Jungle by Upton Sinclair. Other good communist writers. I think that's probably what I really am. I'm a communist. Mm-hmm. We got work to do, gang. Like maybe stop blowing ourselves to bits. Maybe avoid self-extinction after 4 billion years of evolution. For those who, unlike the recent GOP Tea Party senatorial winner in Delaware, for those who, with the exception of those who think the earth is 6,000 years old and Adam and Eve were a nice white couple that lived in the Garden of Eden.
Well, communist slogan is from each according to their ability, to each according to their needs, which, if you think about it, if we worked for the pleasure of work, of giving, of producing, of doing something that is of service to all people,
to all humankind,
and then we were assured in a socialist system that our needs would be covered. And so, if we were getting our pleasure through our productivity and our creativity and our service to each other, and not getting our pleasure out of money and the things it will buy, the materialism, which doesn't buy happiness anyway. Psychologists show that. If we got our priorities a little bit straighter, and that's when, Arthur, I think you started this program by saying that our political system reflects the consciousness, the underlying consciousness
by their
of
deeds, you
the
will
people.
know them.
And so what we've been talking about here reflects the consciousness of our country, which is money buys happiness. So I would think that where we need to go to change this is not a revolution that, as Animal Farm shows. It just, all you do in revolutions is replace the people, but
Soviet
they do the
Union,
same
China,
thing.
Corrupt. Not an example of what we're
We
talking
need
about
to
at all.
raise our consciousness. We need to change our consciousness about what it is that brings happiness. And I've thought about this for a long time, that our whole economy is built on buying and selling. 70% of the GDP is consumer spending in this country. Just think about that.
What does that mean?
So it means that if we all stopped going and buying useless figurines, the economy collapses. I mean, that's what's going on right now. Is the average person has been buying more than they've been spending more than they take in. That in the last few years. So in the contraction of 2 years ago, everybody quit spending. Well, when everybody quits spending, the economy comes to a halt. So but that's not as sustainable in an environmental way anyway. So, it's like our whole economy is built on this completely unsustainable system of buying new things all the time.
There's something even deeper than that, I think, and that's an excellent point. Fat, drunk, and stupid is no way to go through life.
We just need to completely revamp what it's built on.
It's the fact that we live elbow to elbow with people who have nothing.
Yeah.
I mean, every time I see somebody on the street, I give them $1, a homeless person or somebody destitute or a drunk. But it's something and that token, makes you feel a little better, tithing. And we live in a world that is so full of poverty and so full of pain and so full of deprivation. And our book, The Game of God, Recovering Your True Identity, gameofgod.com, says our real problem is that we're all ego-dominated. And that's the essence of ego domination. Mm-hmm. You don't give a rat's rear end about anybody but yourself or your immediate little family. Mm-hmm. And that's supposed to be a noble concept. Just take care of yourself and me and mine. That's it. As long as you do that, you're fine. Is it? Is it? We go through life with blinders on and we shut out the pain that's out there. That's always been there. And even Jesus said that. Because what you're talking about, what I'm talking about, I mean, communism, I think Jesus was a communist. It's a Woody Guthrie song. He said, give to the rich or take, it's a George Bush's song. Take from the rich and give to the poor. So they laid Jesus Christ in his grave.
That's right. Read Acts. That's right after
Happiest
Jesus
book.
died.
Yeah,
the apostles created a communist where everyone sold their belongings and brought the money, and they all shared equally.
So this is idealistic stuff, but what we're talking about on this show is not idealistic. This is the way it is today.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
And that's the way it is that most of us don't have a pot to pee in. It's the truth. And a handful of the masters of the universe that we will never get there.
That's right. We'll just look
never get there.
Income.
The ones that wear $100,000 Rolexes and drive $500,000 cars and up and have 10 homes around the world and over 300-foot mega yachts longer than a football field. We can't even imagine. But they own everything. They own everything. So I say if the Tea Party can do it, why can't we progressives do it? Why can't we get off our ass and start a tidal wave in this country and take those corrupt pigs out of Washington and change the law and kick some of those right-wing mongoloids off the Supreme Court while we're at it? Stop that nonsense life term.
Okay, all right. We're out of time.
Up the people.
So it's a great idea, Arthur.
Try to watch the anger, Arthur.
So remember, our new times are going to be 7 o'clock on Thursdays.
7 to 8.
7 to 8. And if you want to see prior shows, you can see clips from all of the shows we've done on A Question of Meaning on URTV at questionofmeaning.com, our website.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks for watching.
Up the people.